Hello and welcome back to Young Guns. Today I'm joined by my partners in crime, Buckeye Mike from Sport Talk Mike, and Jackson Johnson, and we're here with the wonderful Melissa Triebwasser. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah,
Obviously, you
appreciate
do
it.
so much awesome stuff with frogs today, so we're happy to have such an awesome guest.
Awesome. Thanks for inviting me, guys. Appreciate it.
hmm
Thank you.
So it's crazy the journey that TCU has gone from. They got, of course, the Southwest Conference dissolved, and they got put in the WAC, and then they moved over to Conference USA, to Mountain West, and now to the Big 12, and now they're a playoff team. Just as a TCU alum, just tell me about the crazy journey that the Frogs have been on.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think I don't want to age myself here too much, but my freshman year of college, we were 1-10, and our one victory came against SMU, and students got pepper sprayed because we tore down the goalpost because we were so excited to actually win a game. And then, just a few short months later, Dennis Franchione comes in, kind of starts to resurrect the program, hires a young defensive coordinator named Gary Patterson that nobody had ever heard of. When Franchione leaves for Alabama, nobody wanted Gary Patterson. Nobody thought he was ready. And thankfully, the pieces kind of fell into place for him to be the head coach. And, obviously pulling TCU out of the breakup of the Southwest Conference, getting them into the WAC, dominating the WAC, and then dominating the Conference USA and the Mountain West, and proving that they could compete on a national level with big wins over Oklahoma in 2005. Obviously, the Rose Bowl win was kind of the signature win, but they also went to the Fiesta Bowl the year before that too as an undefeated team. So that, I think for TCU fans, people that have followed the program, when the Big 12 invited TCU and said basically welcome home, I mean, that was kind of the pinnacle of a fan. And since then, they've won a Big 12 championship. They've gone to a Peach Bowl and won it. And now sitting here, 10 years later, about to play in the college football playoff for the first time, it's kind of a testament to when you build things the quote unquote right way, when you invest in an athletics department, when you have the leadership in place that TCU's had with Chris Del Conte and Jeremiah Donati and Victor Boschini, then you have a chance to compete at a high level, no matter who you are. And, at the end of the day, it still feels like we're little old TCU, the little sisters of the poor, like Gordon Gee said all those years back. But I think that TCU has a shot to really reestablish themselves as a national program here, and a team that's going to be one of the top teams in the new Big 12 once Texas and Oklahoma leave, and really has been over Texas for the last 10 or 12 years.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about the quarterback situation going into this season. So Max Duggan was named the backup to Chandler Morris, and then suddenly, I believe he got injured, and then he came in, and then has just
upward trajectory, right?
Yeah, has just rocketed into the Heisman conversation there by the end of the season. Just tell me what he means to this team and how he just got better and better.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because Max Duggan was, for the most part, a 3-year starter. For the time he was a freshman, he split time with Alex Delton, who had transferred in from Kansas State, but it very clearly became Max's team about the second or third game in. Alex Delton just wasn't going to be able to run the offense TCU wanted to run, and he struggled. He was completing just about 60% of his passes. There were a lot of overthrows. There were a lot of throws into the dirt. There were interceptions. And I think a lot of TCU fans going into his junior year were like, we don't know if Max is the guy. There were a lot of doubts of whether or not he could kind of rise to the occasion and be the type of quarterback that could lead TCU to a Big 12 championship and beyond. And so when Chandler Morris came in and pulls off the upset over Baylor after Gary Patterson had been, mutually parted ways, however you want to believe that, then I think people started to think, oh, Chandler's the guy. And you guys know there's nobody more popular than QB2, right? There's nobody more popular on the roster than the guy holding the clipboard. And so going into this season, as much as Sonny Dykes tried to say that he liked all the guys in the room, this was an even competition. I think most people expected Chandler Morris to be the starting quarterback. And it was no surprise when he was the first guy out in the field against Colorado and took every snap of that first half. When he got hurt early in the third quarter, I mean, Max was like a new guy. And so I think that you have to give a lot of credit to Sonny Dykes. You got to give a lot of credit to Garrett Riley for kind of unlocking and understanding what Max Duggan is good at and putting him in a position to do those types of things. But you also have to give a ton of credit to Max. He worked really hard this offseason, spent a lot of time in the playbook, a lot of time with his receivers, did all of the right things. And even after he knew he wasn't going to be the starting quarterback, continued to put in the work. A lot of people say, oh, I'd carry the water for a team if it meant that we were winning. Max is one of the few players that when he says it, I actually believe it. And, he overcame a 9-hour heart procedure that almost cost him the ability to play football. He's played injured every season that he has been on this team. He's played through things. He's been playing through things this year. But I think that what he brings, in addition to, skills that he can make most of the throws, he's obviously an elite runner at the quarterback position. But when players around you are play better because they are following you, I think that that's something you just can't teach. That's the intangibles. That's the it factor. And there's one thing that Max Duggan has in spades. It's the it factor. And so I think you can't, it's almost Tim Tebow-esque. I think Duggan's obviously a better thrower. Maybe Tebow was more of a unique athlete. But that ability just to rally people around you, and TCU's not been short of talent on the offensive side of the ball the last 3 years. And they returned 82% of their production from last year to this year. And so it's not like these are new guys making plays. This is just a matter of an offensive coaching staff that understands what their players are good at, putting them in a position to do it, and a team that really believes in each other and has bought in wholeheartedly in a way that, I didn't see around TCU since probably that 2015, maybe the 2017 season.
So what was the reaction when Max Duggan declared for the 2023 draft? Is he, what's his draft stock going to look like, after the playoff? And, what was the reaction of the TCU fan base when that happened?
It's so interesting because I think a lot of people thought, well, Max has got one more year if he wants. He can play one more year because of the COVID year. He can make more money in NIL staying at TCU than he would going professional. But I did not hear from a single TCU fan that wasn't completely in support of his declaration. And the fact that he did it the month before the early signing period began, so that the staff could use that if they wanted to pitch a QB. And I know that they were really involved in the Austin Novosad discussions before Novosad's flipped to Oregon, which as a TCU fan, watching him ditch Baylor at the altar was just delightful. I didn't even care that he didn't come to TCU. We were just like, oh, I feel a little bit bad for Baylor fans, but also they're Baylor fans. I don't feel bad for them at all. So, I think that Max Duggan is the ultimate competitor, right? And that it's going to be really, really hard for him to do anything to raise his stock next year. I mean, it's a guy that finished second in the Heisman, that took his team to 12-0 start, that, had that 95-yard drive in the Big 12 championship to help tie the game. That was literally all him. Like, he ran all 95 yards. What else does he have left to accomplish? If he can go out on top winning TCU national championship, great. But I don't know that even the most ardent of TCU fans expects that. It can happen. We're not doubting it can happen, but he doesn't need to do that to cement his legacy. Sonny Dykes said in his press conference this morning that Max Duggan is on the Mount Rushmore of TCU football, and I don't think whatever happens Saturday changes that. Right. He has become one of the not just elite players in TCU history, but one of the icons and the legends. You're going to have to put Max Duggan's name alongside Andy Dalton, LaDainian Tomlinson's, Bob Lilly, Sammy Baugh, Davey O'Brien. He's right. The only quarterback in TCU history to win the Davey O'Brien Award, an award named for a TCU quarterback. And so, you know what? You're 22, 23 years old. You've given everything to this program. Go get your money, buddy. I'm not going to doubt him. I think he's probably a late round draft pick, but we're seeing, I'm a 49ers fan. We're seeing what Brock Purdy is doing in San Francisco. It's Mr. Irrelevant. So I wouldn't bet against him. I don't know that he'll be a starting quarterback for 10 years in the NFL. I bet he'll be on a roster for a really, really long time, and he will win games as an NFL starter when called upon. So I think it was the right decision, and I'm really excited for him to have his opportunity to go pursue his dream. I wouldn't wish against that, for anybody.
So maybe the 49ers can get Max Duggan because Mr. Garoppolo is a free agent after this year. So.
Yeah, little Max Duggan and Brock Purdy, former rivals, now friends. It would be awesome.
Hey, you might get the best of both worlds pretty soon.
So I feel like not just because of, I believe, isn't Max Duggan a ginger, so to speak?
He is. The great redheaded quarterback legacy at TCU, yes.
I was going to say, to me, it feels like Max Duggan is very comparable to the one Andy Dalton.
Yeah, I think it's a fair comparison. Max is a better athlete than Andy. Andy was a better runner than people gave him credit for, but Max Duggan's absolutely a better athlete. but yeah, I mean, when you look at guys that become the faces of your program, LaDainian Tomlinson and Andy Dalton are the gold standard for the modern TCU fan, not just for what they did on the field, but who they are off the field. Tomlinson is a member of the TCU Board of Regents. Andy Dalton is still really involved in the program. He's obviously still playing, but he keeps a home in Fort Worth. I think Max belongs right alongside of those guys in the pantheon of TCU greats in any sport at any level. Not just for on-field performance, but for the character, the grit. Nobody embodies TCU football. You talked about the journey from, the Southwest Conference to the Big 12. Nobody embodies that spirit more physically, as a person, than Max Duggan. He is TCU football, in all the best possible ways.
So when did the fans start to believe? Was it taking the iron skillet? Was it blowing out the Sooners? Was it the win over OK State? When did fans start to believe, we can win the Big 12? And when did they start to believe this is possible? We can make the playoff?
So I personally, in my weekly picks, picked against TCU consistently until I think the West Virginia game. I think we were all kind of, beating Colorado in Colorado is a bad Colorado team, obviously. But okay, we went on the road, first game under a new coach, and won relatively convincingly. The first half was a little messy, but to be expected. Then you go into SMU and you build that huge lead, and it looks like you're going to dominate. Ponies come back a little bit. It's a close win, but still, we hadn't beaten SMU in the last two tries. That was a big deal, especially with all the emotions with that game, obviously, with Sonny Dykes changing teams. The Oklahoma game was the first time where we started to go, oh, this offense might actually work. And this defense is good enough. But, you've got the excuse of Dylan Gabriel got hurt. I think when you really you started to see signs that this could be a really good team against Oklahoma, but it was the Oklahoma State game and that stretch of 4 straight wins over ranked opponents and the 2 big comebacks over Oklahoma State and Kansas State, where it became not just this is a talented team and a talented group of guys and a well-coached team, but this team's got a little bit of magic to them. And destiny and fate and magic matter a lot in college football. Momentum, all of those things can make a huge, huge difference. And we knew that TCU was going to have to play 9 straight conference games. They haven't had a bye week since week 2. And so you knew that was going to be arduous in a process. But when you started to see them win those games, it was kind of still waiting for the other shoe to drop. You thought, okay, well, going to Austin, playing in front of 100,000 people on game day, that might be a loss, but this team can overcome that, make a Big 12 championship, and then, they win. And then you go into Baylor and, the bazooka on the Brazos, and I was on the field for that game, taking photos, and just one of the most unbelievable. I've never seen anything like that in person. Never seen anything like it. It was cool.
You got to see a game-winning field goal in person. Man.
Yeah, I was taking photos. Yeah, I was right behind it watching. It was miserable. I'd gotten food poisoning the night before. Everything about that day was terrible until that second. And then it was the greatest moment of one of the greatest sports moments of my life. It was so cool. I'm trying really hard not to take for granted the fact that I'm a credentialed journalist covering this season and these games, and I'm in Phoenix about to be a photographer on the field for the college football playoff. That has not gone over my head by any stretch. But yeah, I mean, I think you started to see kind of the destiny thing, and losing the Big 12 championship was a super disappointment, but I don't think it made anybody doubt this team. The comebacks are there. They do have a little bit of magic. They have that something special. I think for most TCU fans, we're also a little bit hurt. We also have a little bit of PTSD, from great teams in the past, the way some seasons have ended. Right. So I don't know that we fully bought into just what the potential could be until that win at Texas. I think it's now you start to think, hey, you know what? Michigan's a really good football team, and there's a really good shot that they're going to be the better team on Saturday. Maybe they do out physical TCU. Maybe the fact that they've been here before helps, but I would never say that TCU can't or that they won't. Everything, the rest of the media might be against them, and I was talking to Michigan players, and I don't think they're too worried about TCU, but it would not surprise me whatsoever if the Horned Frogs came out and shocked the world on Saturday and had the first upset in the college football playoffs, because there's not been a single one to this point. Why not us?
So when watching the Fiesta Bowl, what are the strengths and weaknesses that TCU has that everyone needs to look out for?
So I think the biggest thing that you're going to see with TCU, especially everybody wants to talk about the Big 12 as being soft. I think this TCU team is a really physical football team. Now, they aren't as big as Michigan. They're not as big as the Big Ten, and maybe you're not going to see it get quite as dirty in the trenches as you would the SEC. But this is still a really physically gifted TCU team. And the one thing that they have that Michigan has not seen yet is just team speed up and down the roster. This is a very, very fast group on both sides of the ball. The secondary is elite and really, really successful at causing problems and forcing turnovers. And the wide receiving core, led by Quentin Johnston, who's possibly going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, 6'4" guy with 4.4 speed. I mean, how many 6'4" wide receivers in college do you see running jet sweeps? Because this dude runs a lot of jet sweeps. Darius Davis, who I think was recorded the 2 fastest times in college football this season. He not only returns punts and kicks, but you can get him loose in the slot. Like, he literally is, every time he catches the ball, a threat to take it to the house, no matter where he is on the football field. We've seen him do it time and time again. Tay Barber, who is like the slow guy in the group, and I think he still runs like a 4.55. So there's elite talent up and down this roster and elite athleticism. And then Max Duggan is one of the fastest quarterbacks in college football as well. And we haven't seen him healthy, but we saw what he did in that Oklahoma game. He can break off a 60-yard run, and it's certainly possible that he will on Saturday. Defensively, I think the biggest thing is, and defensively and offensively, where Michigan has a decisive advantage is on the offensive line and the defensive line. They are a lot bigger. They are a lot more experienced, and they are, on paper, better players on both sides. They're going to win the battle of the trenches. They're going to move people. That Michigan offensive line is going to move that TCU defensive line that starts a true freshman who turned 18 after the first game of the season at nose tackle, and Demonic Williams. So they're going to move them. The key is going to be, can TCU play mistake-free football? Can they bust a couple of big plays? Can they create those chunk plays and those opportunities in order to keep this thing interesting? Because Michigan can grind it down. They can put together an 11, 12 play, 85-yard drive where they only throw it twice and get in the end zone. TCU is going to have to score in bursts and chunks, and they're going to have to score in the red zone. And we saw that kind of come back to bite them a little bit in the Big 12 championship and those 3rd and 1s and 4th and short situations. They're going to have to convert red zone opportunities into 7 points. Settling for field goals isn't going to get it done. So I think those are the things that you're going to want to be paying attention to. Is, can TCU break out the explosive plays? Can they hold their own at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball? And can they play mistake-free football and force J.J. McCarthy, who is very, very good and has obviously gained a ton of experience, but is still a young quarterback making his first postseason start? Can they force him to make a mistake or two that will give TCU an opportunity to get that momentum? Once this offense gets rolling, anything can happen.
So after watching the Big 12 championship game when TCU lost, and then on like the Fox halftime show, the Big 10 championship game, where Saban was campaigning for Bama to get in, and then later on SportsCenter with Scott Van Pelt, where Nick Saban was campaigning to get in. How worried was the TCU fan base about getting in? Were you guys worried that you were going to get, where that Big 12 title game loss was used against you?
Yes. I mean, yes. I was 100% worried. I would say, like you guys were saying before, you were going to bring up 2014. I was telling you, it still hurt me. Like, this is 8 years later. And like, I can still recall exactly where I was and how I was feeling in the moment when TCU dropped from 3 to 6. Like, it was like, I've done a lot of sports crying in my life because I am a Sacramento Kings fan and a TCU fan. Yeah, it's brutal. And so there's been a lot of pain, sports pain for me. But that's the most painful sports moment of my life, even more so than Vlade Divac using one hand to tip a rebound out to Robert Horry instead of corralling it with 2 hands like any normal sane individual would do. But it's fun. We're not going to talk about Sacramento Kings in 2000. We're not going to do it. So no, I was still concerned. The thing I will say that saved me is going into that 4th quarter, and TCU was down, I think 11. It might have been 14. I can't remember, but that's when I was like, oh, this is it. We're screwed. When they came back to tie it and sent the game to overtime, that's when I started to feel a lot more confident that TCU was winning, and it didn't matter what happened as long as they lost in OT, they were probably okay. And knowing how badly USC got mollywogged on Friday night, I think gave us a little bit more confidence too, that as long as it was close, that the Frogs are probably going to be okay. All of Saban's posturing and everything to me would just really rang on empty ears. At the end of the day, 2 losses and didn't play this conference championship game. I was talking to one of the coaches, and one of the things that he mentioned is that he was around here in 2014 as well, and he said that He thinks that actually helped TCU because he didn't think that the committee would screw over the Frogs twice when both times they had such a good argument for being in. And so making your conference championship game, playing in an overtime loss to a top 10 team, because Kansas State was a top 10 team and is, I felt as good as I could possibly feel without knowing for sure. When I got the email at like 8 a.m. Sunday morning from the Fiesta Bowl, like starting to give early media stuff, I was like, okay. I still bawled my eyes out at the American Airlines gate in the airport when it was announced as I was getting ready to fly back to California. I was just sitting there by myself in tears, and all these people are like, "What? Like, are you okay?" And I'm like, "I've never been happier. Like, this is the greatest moment of my life." So it was a really really special feeling for sure.
Well, for the audience that may not know this, that is watching this magnificent interview, the last time TCU won a national championship was 1938, and that was a little bit after Disney's first film, Snow White 7 Dwarfs, was released. So let that sink in, audience. So
even I wasn't alive for that one. So
I don't even think our grandparents were alive for that one. But TCU wins it all. It'll be the first time since 1938. But what are the keys to victory for TCU?
You're going to have to get a play in special teams. I think they're going to need a punt return, a big punt return, or a big kick return, preferably getting one all the way back to the end zone. Darius Davis hasn't returned kicks in the last couple of weeks because he's been hurt. This is a very fresh, very fast Darius Davis can make a huge difference in the field position game. And you're going to I don't want to say you've got to put this game on JJ McCarthy's shoulders, because I don't want it to sound like I don't think that he can win the game for him. But you're not going to – if you go back to the last time that TCU played a big bowl game against the Big Ten team, that's the 2010 Rose Bowl against Wisconsin. And Wisconsin came in as the exact same thing. They have all the beef in the middle. That's your line on both sides. They're going to dominate the line of scrimmage. They've got the two of the best running backs in the country at that time. But because TCU did such a good job of kind of clogging those rush lanes, Wisconsin threw the ball in ways and more often than they were comfortable doing. And that's ultimately how TCU won that game. It was not a high-scoring game. It was 21-19. I expect more points on Saturday, but I think the philosophy is still the same. Make J.J. McCarthy uncomfortable. Make him throw on the move. Keep him under pressure. And don't let the Wolverines just grind the clock down with the running game. They have such a good rushing attack, and obviously the best offensive line in the country for 2 years running. And so if you let them control the line of scrimmage in that way and play the game the way they want to play it, it's going to be a long day for TCU. I still think it can be a close game. I still think the Frogs can cover, but I think that's not a formula for TCU to win. They're going to need to get Michigan behind. They're going to need to score early, and TCU's been a second half team most of the season. And so that's why I think special teams is going to play such a huge role in that. But if they can get Michigan feeling like they have to play a little bit faster, that's not the way that they want to play. And that's the way that TCU is very, very comfortable playing. And so the things I want to see is I want to see a turnover-free game for TCU. I want to see a big special teams play, and I want to go into half within one score of Michigan, or preferably leading. That will give me confidence that the Frogs can potentially pull this thing off. If it gets into the fourth quarter and it's a 3-point or a 4-point game, I'd say that I'd feel pretty good as a TCU fan about my chances. I said, I still think Michigan is favored for a reason. That's a really, really good football team that's been here before, that isn't going to get lost in the hoopla. But this TCU team's got a little bit of magic to them. And I don't know if that's enough to win a playoff game, but it was enough to get them here. And so, I think if it's just close and you keep it and that kind of anything can happen, then, maybe the impossible happens, and maybe TCU gets to face off with Ohio State, get a little rematch for what should have been in 2014.
So there is one. Okay, go, Mike.
If TCU pulls off the upset, and plays whoever in the national championship and magically wins the whole thing, do you think that seats Sonny Dykes really well? Or do you think that, as far as like his future, do you think it's kind of already set, like he's already exceeded expectations, and if you pull off the upset and win it, or just get to the national title, that it kind of puts the expectations higher going into next year and kind of sets a new bar?
I think it's interesting because I think when you see a coach come in and exceed, I mean, TCU had not played in a bowl game since 2018 when they played in the Cheez-It Bowl, the greatest bowl game ever played. There was more interceptions than pass completions between the two teams at one point. I was also here in Phoenix for that game, and it was an absolute disasterful delight. I loved it. And then they qualified for the Texas Bowl. They didn't get to play because of COVID. But when you come in and you exceed expectations so dramatically in year one, it does kind of raise the question of what is success for Sonny Dykes and TCU. And the thing is this is awesome. This is great. This is really freaking cool. But Cincinnati made the playoffs last year, and then they lost their head coach to Wisconsin. And so you have to not just build TCU doesn't, and Sonny Dykes said this today in his press conference, TCU doesn't want to be a team that has one good season. They want to be a program that every year is on the national radar as a contender. They want to recruit in the top 15, which they're very close to doing. There's one kid that if he signs, I think two kids that if they get, they'll finish with close to a top 15 class. But he wants that to be the expectation. When Texas and Oklahoma leave, TCU's been the number 3 recruiting school in the Big 12 for the past several seasons. They want to be the best recruiting school in the Big 12, and they want to be the favorites. They want to sit on the top of that pyramid, probably alongside Oklahoma State if Mike Gundy can pull his head out of his rear end, start using the transfer portal. I mean, that's a big ask for Matt Gundy, period. But, BYU, I think, has a chance to be good. Houston has a chance to be really good. Baylor, every 3 years is going to be really, really good, potentially a little bit more than that. But TC wants to be the new power in that new Big 12. And so, yeah, if Sonny Dykes wins a national championship this season, go ahead and build the statue right next to Gary's. It's totally fine. Everybody will be 100% on board with that. But just by the fact that he got them here, obviously has engendered a ton of goodwill among TCU fans and has earned him and his assistants a big fat pay raise. It's much deserved. But now the question becomes, what are you going to do next? Because one good season isn't enough in college football. Everybody has shown that you can be a Cinderella once or twice. I mean, we saw it with TCU early. We saw it with Boise State. We saw it with Cincinnati, with UCF. I mean, even Coastal Carolina had a moment. Everybody can have a good season or two. Can you build the type of program, especially with the financial investment that TCU as a university has made, to be, if not a blue blood, kind of that second tier down? And I think that that's going to be the real testament. Whatever happens this year in a vacuum, in a bubble, is worthy of being celebrated, period. But it's not going to matter if you go next year and you don't capitalize on the success of this year and you don't build longstanding tradition as far as getting TCU back to being that program that people talk about, if not in the same breath as the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Georgias, the Alabamas, those elite schools. But you should be talking about them right alongside maybe the Washingtons, the Auburns, maybe not LSU. LSU's got pretty good history too, but you should be able to be right in that conversation. And to do that in order to earn that lasting respect, when you have these opportunities to beat these blue blood programs, the winningest program in college football history, if you can do that, then you're showing that you're not a flash in the pan, but you're a program that's on the verge of being one of the elite programs in college football.
So do you think that with the upcoming 12-team playoff expansion, it kind of favors schools like TCU who are like good enough to always be right on the edge, but not good enough because you're not a name brand, as people like to say,
100%.
or you're not this because too many losses? I mean, do you think that it helps to favor the smaller schools like TCU, Cincinnati, Houston?
Yeah,
Kind
absolutely. Like, I think it gets you a seat at the table a hell of a lot easier, right? Like, that's the thing. If you can't win the games, if you don't get invited to the games. And so it's going to open the doors for a lot of those kind of second tier programs to have that opportunity to play for national championship. At the end of the day, though, I still think you're going to see the cream rise to the top because, they promised us with NIL and the transfer portal, it was going to even the playing field. Well, it does for everybody else except for the upper echelon. Like Georgia's always going to be Georgia. I mean, look at us. We're talking about Alabama as one of the worst seasons that they've had in Nick Saban, and they lost 2 games and still were on the verge of making the college football playoffs. Like those elite top tier blue blood programs are always going to have built-in advantages. And that's the way that college football has worked for, longer than we've been alive. the question's going to become is can you get into the dance and make some noise? I don't think we're going to see March Madness-esque Cinderella runs, but I do think you'll have a chance for some of these programs to get in, to win a game, maybe two, to host the game on their stadium. It just changes their fortunes dramatically just by the financial and the national attention that they're going to get. And so, maybe it takes a team like TCU, who generally recruits in the top 30 to 35, and they can consistently be a top 15 to 20. Maybe it takes a program like a Colorado, who now all of a sudden has this positive momentum with Deion Sanders being there, and it enables them to kind of be a contender in the Pac-12 and make a playoff. He's not going to be there for very long, but if he stayed for 3 or 4 years, maybe they can sneak in once or twice. It's going to give the Baylors of the world, the Cincinnatis of the world, the Houstons of the world, the Stanfords, and all of these other programs that are working against their own individual difficulties, opportunities to get that influx of financial resources and get that influx of eyeballs. It's going to help them become more of a national brand. I don't think you're going to see a lot of major upsets when it comes to winning championships, but what you're going to see is a lot of programs improve dramatically because they get an opportunity to play on that stage.
Oh.
So there's a little curse of the quarterback when they play TCU going on. What do you think that all was about? And do you think it helped TCU a good bit?
I don't want to say that Jamoy Hodge is a stone cold killer, but he's a stone cold killer, right? Like, that's just the poor guy. Like the Dylan Gabriel hit, I will fully admit. I think the best thing I saw about that was it was a dirty hit by not a dirty player. I don't think Jamoy Hodge is a dirty player, but I think it was a dirty hit. I will own that one. I will wear that one. That's fine. The others were just like, look, the Jalen Daniels, I think TCU fans were just as heartbroken when he got hurt, but it was a football play. He's falling out of bounds. A 260-pound guy falls on top of you. You're going to probably separate your shoulder or break your clavicle. It's going to happen. The others, Spencer Sanders was banged up coming in. Adrian Martinez took himself out without getting hit.
That was a blessing in disguise for K-State. So.
Yeah, it really, really was, right? So, yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say that playing a lot of backup quarterbacks didn't help, but TCU also played a lot of full-strength guys too and played them well. There are always things that have to bounce your way. When you look at Baylor last year, I think they won 6 or 7 games by 1 score. They got a lot of turnovers. The ball bounced their way. There's always an element of luck involved when you aren't stacking 4- and 5-star blue chip prospects at every position. And so, yeah, I don't want to say that injuries are luck, but to some degree they are kind of chance. And so the injury ball bounced TCU's way. This is a program that has dealt with more injuries or as many injuries as anybody in the country over the last 5 or 6 years. And so this year, instead of having guys go out, guys were going out against them. And so, yeah, does that play into it? Sure. But at the end of the day, you still have to go win games. You still have to find a way to make it happen. And so all you can do is line up against the guys that are in front of you and do the best that you can do. And I don't want to see guys get hurt. I was said the Jalen Daniels injury, that crushed me. That kid deserved everything he got. What he did in the Liberty Bowl, on that comeback he's an unbelievable talent. I don't want to see those types of things happen, but when they do, it's as long as you're not trying to take guys out, you just got to keep playing football. And I think they've seen some full strength teams. And obviously I think both teams are going to come into this game on Saturday the healthiest that they've been in weeks. Max Duggan hasn't been healthy. Quentin Johnson hasn't been healthy. Johnny Hodges hasn't been healthy. These are critical players, but you just got to keep playing. And TCU is not going to make excuses for losing the Big 12 championship without Johnny Hodges or the defensive newcomer of the year in the Big 12, against Deuce Vaughn, one of the best offensive players in the country. All you do is you line up the guys. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who it is or who's out. You just keep playing. And TCU's job is to win games, and they did that.
So how much of a factor is Kendre Miller in the Fiesta Bowl? Not a lot of folks know about him. So,
Yeah, he's great. Kendre Miller is great. And like you said, he's kind of the forgotten about guy with how good Max Duggan has been and how good Quentin Johnston has been, the way that passing game. But Kendre Miller is really the straw that stirs the drink. He is capable, TCU won in Austin because of Kendre Miller. He busted off that 65-yard run to kind of get TCU on the board and break the scoring drought. He can get the hard yards. He's not a guy that's going to go into the NFL draft and blow you away at the combine. He's not going to put up a Christian McCaffrey type thing or he's not this super elite athlete. What he is a guy who doesn't stop moving, who pushes the pile, who's not afraid of the hard yards, who seeks out contact. And most of the time when you need a short yardage gain, he's going to do it. and TCU's offensive line has struggled this season. They've been a lot better the last couple of weeks, but this is a unit that's had its issues, and Kendra Miller just keeps chugging along. And so he's a huge factor. The Frogs are going to have to get yards on the ground because Michigan's really going to be focused on putting pressure on Max Duggan. And look, there's going to be a lot of sacks. I have a feeling Max is going to be running for his life quite a bit. And we saw that against some of the elite pass rushing defenses in the Big 12. Texas has a great pass rush defense. I think Max was sacked 4 or 5 times in that game. Texas Tech, he was sacked 4 or 5 times in that game. Kansas State, he was sacked 4 or 5 times in that game. And so these are all teams that are similar up front to Michigan, but obviously Michigan's a little bit more talented. And so if you can establish the run, if you can gain some ground on the ground, then I think it's going to open up the passing game, obviously. And so generally when TCU needs a big play, it's one of two things. It's either Kendra Miller breaking off a huge run out of nowhere, almost always in the third quarter, shortly after the halftime break, or it's Max Duggan doing the old, Quentin's down there somewhere, I'm just going to chuck it 40 yards and hope for the best, because Quentin's going to win most of those battles. We've seen that time and time again. And so, Kendra and Tay Barber are probably the two guys that don't get enough credit in this offense. But honestly, when those two guys play well, TCU tends to win and to win in decisive fashion.
So, I believe earlier you mentioned that you were like a photographer for the program. In history, we have seen memorable moments captured in pictures, like, sorry, Will, but Eddie George in the shoe running away from, I believe it was in the shoe, running away from all the Notre Dame defenders, or the back corner of the end zone, Miami, Florida versus Ohio State, the 03 Fiesta Bowl, right before they called the not PI
Yes.
call. Have you ever in your career covering TCU, or just in general, have you come across yourself taking a memorable moment photo?
Yeah, I mean, I've been really fortunate that I've been in the right place at the right time for a couple of photos that I'm super proud of. There was a picture. It's the funniest one. It's the best photo I've probably ever taken, but it's funny because he actually ended up missing the dunk. But I got to cover TCU basketball in Staples Center against USC a few years ago. And Archie Miller, who ended up transferring out of the program and kind of fell off the college basketball map, went up for just the poster of all poster dunks. Like, this was Ja Morant level. And I got him in like the full Air Jordan, like ball up, like, and again, he bricked the dunk. He bricked the hell out of the dunk. But nobody knows that. And the picture was really, really cool. And it's probably the most viral photo I've ever had. I thought that was really cool. I said I was on the field, for the game-winning field goal at Baylor this year. There's a great photo of Max walking into the tunnel in front of all the fans with his frogs up, and I got that kind of from behind with all the fans losing their minds as he walks out. That photo has a really special place in my heart. I was also there for the triple overtime loss in Fort Worth when Baylor was a top 10 team and TCU was unranked, I think, and they almost pulled off a stunning upset there. And there was a controversy of whether Max was in or not on a touchdown run late in the game. And I got the picture of him like where he didn't step out, but everybody said he stepped out. And I was like zooming in. I could see the little bit of grass blades between his shoe and the sideline. It's fine, whatever, I'm over it. So there have been some of those really cool moments. And the Big 12 championship game, he was so gassed by the end of that game. And so him in the end zone, like kind of puking a little bit, but all of his teammates around him after he scored that final touchdown, that's one that I'll remember for sure. I've gotten to have I shot the College World Series when TCU played. There is a great moment of one of the freshman pitchers, like after he just won the game from the mound with a great save, like in front of the sign, and all the team was in his mind. So there have been some really, really cool moments. And I've taken some pictures that, I'm just proud of the quality, but mostly just the memories associated with them are really special to me. I'm really, really hoping that on Saturday I get to take an all-timer. If TCU somehow pulls off this win, if I'm not crying so much from just joy and sports emotion, then hopefully I'll capture a really special photo at the end of that. I think just covering this team, though, there have been so many really special moments and things I'll look back fondly of. Being on the field for 5 or 6 of those, I think, has been really special.
So, as far as being a photographer for like football games, I've heard, if you listen to just different people that do that for a living, I've heard the consensus mostly be like, if you are along the back line of the end zone, you most of the time tend to get the right angle. Like, for example, the Eddie George photo, he's running towards the photographer.
Yeah.
I believe there's a photo from the 85 yards run through the South, the Ezekiel Elliott
Yeah.
breakaway in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah.
I believe there's an angle of one where he's running towards the photographer. So essentially, to whittle down my question, what to you is the best spot as far as being a photographer on the football field to get the perfect picture?
So it depends. Like I move around a lot. The sidelines can be really tight. I got run over by Keontae Ingram and shredded my knee a couple years ago covering on a TCU sideline because Jeff Gladney, rest in peace, hit him and he just went head first into my knee, like helmet first into my knee. That was a pretty iconic photo too because I got the photo before I got hit. It was pretty cool. But I think it depends what you want. And as I've gotten older and more experienced, like there are a lot of great action photographers out in this world. And so I can take good action photos, but I'm always kind of looking for the moment and the emotion in the photo. I want to tell a story with my photography as much as I want to capture the great shot. And so, like the two pictures I got at the Baylor game this year that I liked the best were both shot from behind, and I wanted the crowd in the shot. And so getting the field goal as it was going through, like right before as it was leaving the foot of Griffin Kell, and having the TCU fans, which were in that section in front of him, like seeing them kind of start to cheer in the background, like that to me was a more interesting photo than getting the shot of him actually kicking the ball. The same thing with the Max is watching Max walk into the tunnel. I don't have his face, but just the back of him with all the fans' emotions. Like that to me was where the story was. And so, I think from an action perspective, the action coming towards you is more exciting and gives you a better photo of the player. But it kind of depends what you want. Like, and I tend to leave the play a little bit sooner now as a photographer and look for the reaction. Like I want to get the teammates' reactions, the coaches' reactions, the fans' reactions, as much as I want to get the actual moment of the play, because I know that so many other people are probably capturing that instant of the action. So where can I do something that's unique, and where can I tell a story that not everybody else is already telling?
Make them.
So how has obviously Gary Patterson was awesome at TCU, but how has Sonny Dykes brought like a new breath of fresh air into the program?
I mean, I think that's exactly it. It's a breath of fresh air. Gary was very locked down. There wasn't a ton of media access. There wasn't a lot of opportunities to talk to players and coaches that weren't the ones that were kind of designated to be the regularly available players. And Sonny Dykes came in and immediately threw open the doors to the practice facilities and threw open the doors to the football offices. And, oh, you want to talk to this coordinator? You want to talk to this assistant? Oh, you want to talk to this 17-year-old true freshman? By all means, have at it. And I think that he understands. I've been talking to a lot of the national media, which again, one of the coolest things about being down here is like all these writers who I admire, who I've been reading their work for decades, I'm just hanging out with them in the media hospitality room. I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, oh, these are all like my heroes, and they're just chilling right next to me and talking to me like I'm actually somebody. It's pretty cool. But just, they stopped writing stories about TCU on a national level because TCU didn't act like they wanted them in there. And Gary Patterson's an old school coach, and he's very locked down and very buttoned up and just didn't want people to see what he was doing. Because he didn't want his game plans to get out. And I understand that to a degree, but I think of the new world of college football, it's about exposure and it's about opportunity. And so now the Athletic and ESPN and CBS and Yahoo and all of these national writers can come in anytime they want. And Frogs Today, and these local people, like they'll let any of us talk to anybody at any time. And I think that that's really changed just kind of the perception from outside. But he's also completely overhauled the strength and conditioning and the nutrition and the way that they practice, the time that they practice, the amount of time that they practice. He gives a lot of ownership to his assistant coaches, his coordinators. He's not, Sonny Dykes is a CEO head coach. He's not in there micromanaging every minute of practice. He's saying, okay, Lincoln or Garrett Riley and Joe Gillespie, what do you guys need to do? Go ahead and budget out your practice time for those things. And let's those two guys work together. And he just like the thing I've heard time and time again from players, and they all echoed it again during the availability on Thursday, is just that this team is completely bought in. And I kept asking, how does one year change so much? when it comes to a team that basically everybody came back, how did you make such a dramatic change? And these guys just, the vibes, like I hate to just boil it down to vibes, but it is. The vibes are so different around this program. These guys like each other. They play hard for each other. They're completely unselfish. I mean, when you've got so many talented wide receivers and tight ends and running backs and nobody's complaining about carries or targets, like that's an incredible thing for a bunch of 18 to 22-year-old kids. They've bought in because Sonny sets the tone, and the tone is, hey, like, this is how we're going to do things. Here's what I'm going to tell you we're going to do, and I'm actually going to do it. And oh, by the way, when you win your first 12 games of the season, everybody kind of goes, I guess this is working. I don't want to be the problem. And that helps too.
So what was it like
Justin.
to see Garrett Riley win the Broyles Award this year?
Terrifying, because you know that award basically means that you're going to get hired for a head coaching job sooner rather than later. He's been so awesome. Garrett is he's an incredible offensive mind. He's also just a really great person, great family. Obviously, the Riley family, Oklahoma fans might say something else about him, but they're good people. They're good human beings. Those two brothers being in New York together with the top two Heisman finishers, pretty freaking cool. Like that's a total mic drop moment, I think. But yeah, I mean, he deserved it. I think Joe Gillespie also could have been a finalist just as easily, what he's done. But when if you're doing your job as a head coach, you're sending guys out to be head coaches themselves. And I think Sonny is really big on developing his coaching tree. And there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to have opportunities to go elsewhere. We've already seen Brian Carrington head to Arizona State for an on-field coaching position. And he's one of the best recruiters in the country. So that was a big loss. But that's your job as a head coach. If you're just holding on to your guys and you're halting their development, you're not making your program better. If you can send guys out into the world and help them get to where they want to be in their careers, and then you've been a great asset to them and their families. And so he deserved it. It was awesome to see. I'm super happy for him. I know he's turned down opportunities. A&M tried to throw a bag at him, and he said no thank you, because he's a smart man and nobody would want to touch that dumpster fire in College Station. Go be a nobody, basically assistant to Jimbo, who's going to call all the plays anyways. But that's not going to be the last school that comes calling for him either. And I'm sure that there are other conversations happening. He's going to have opportunities. He wants to be a head coach somewhere down the line. And so, from a TCU perspective, that you hope you take advantage of the opportunities while you have him here, and that you can keep him for another season or two. But when he does leave, as long as he doesn't leave for a lateral move, then I'll completely understand it and be supported. If he tries to pull the Gary Patterson and go be the OC at Texas, or make a jump to the SEC, I might be bitter for a few minutes. But when success begets success, and when he's been as good as he's been, then whatever he wants to do next with his life is the right thing for him, and I support that.
You won't be Alabama and the new offensive coordinator, will you?
So that rumor is actually floating around that the Alabama has come calling for him, and I don't know if I believe it. I've been told not to believe it, but I have not been told by Garrett Riley not to believe it. And so people who know things, have said that those conversations are happening. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I don't have any reason for that, other than people who are tighter to this program than I am have said not to worry about that as a thing. But you know what? Look, if someone tries to money whip him, you can't money whip TCU. People have been saying that for years. You cannot money whip TCU. TCU's got as much money as just about anybody. If he feels like that's the best move for his career, I mean, how are you going to tell a guy not to do that? I don't know if he wants to be one of 30 guys on staff at Alabama. Wow. I mean, that's kind of my thought. I think his next move would probably be to be a head coach. And I think he's going to be a hell of a head coach someday.
Oh, he will for sure.
So, between you and the fan base as a whole, what do you think everyone thinks as far as like how would they rate the season on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, 1,000, million, 100, infinity. Like TCU was picked to finish 7th in the Big 12. 7th.
Right.
Like, and they were within 6 inches of winning it. Look, the disappointment of not winning the conference. The thing that like is going to kind of gnaw at me, and I know it's gnawing at the players a hell of a lot more than it is me, is TC's going to have one of the best seasons in their history and not have anything to show for it if they don't win on Saturday, right? There's not going to be any new trophies in the trophy case. Now, there will be a brand spanking new sign painted on the side of A&G Carter Stadium saying 2022 college football playoffs, but Fiesta Bowl participant, and that's pretty freaking awesome too. But yeah, I mean, it'd be a little bit of a bummer to not be able to have the Big 12 Conference Championship trophy and not to have the Fiesta Bowl trophy. But for what it's done for this program long term, I think that you have to rate this an 11 or 12 or 100 out of 10 for sure. There's not a lot of the loss hurt in the moment, but there's not a lot of lingering disappointment about anything that's happened. And barring an absolute embarrassment on Saturday, which I don't foresee happening, I don't think there's going to be any disappointment among the fan base over the results of this season, win or lose against Michigan. Just don't get blown out. Keep it respectable. Look like you know what you were doing out there, and I think everybody's going to be happy.
So, first of all, to what you said about not being blown out, I personally, I think you guys have a chance because if you guys were projected to be blown out, I think the spread would be bigger than 9.
Yeah. Is it up to 9 now?
I thought that's what it started at.
It started, I think, at 7 or 7.5. It's been kind of, you know what? The bigger the spread, the better. I'm fine with that. Gives all the motivation.
And then I know that just winning the Fiesta Bowl is here for you guys, as far as chance, and winning it all is here.
Yeah.
But
that might be too generous, but
how do you think that, because you were talking about the trophy case, do you think that it would make up and be almost bittersweet to pull off an Alabama-esque and not win your conference, turn around and win the whole freaking thing?
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. I don't care about the Big 12 if TCU wins the national championship. I could care less. Kansas State had their moment. Good for them. So happy for them. Great. Moving on. Yeah, no, TCU is going to have plenty of opportunities to win the Big 12. I really believe that in the next 10 years. I think that they're going to be really well positioned to consistently be a contender, and that there will be another Big 12 championship in that trophy case in the next 3 to 5 years, barring something completely unforeseen. I don't know how often this is TCU's probably only shot to make it into the 14 playoff. And the one thing about making it in the 14 playoff is you just have to win 2 games. You just have to win 1 to get to the national title game. If TCU somehow pulls off the win Saturday, I don't care what happens. I'm good. Would winning a national championship be unbelievable? Absolutely. Sign me up for it 100%. Whatever Saturday would be the conclusion of my season if TCU won. The next thing, it's just gravy. At that, you're just putting the cherry on the top. I wouldn't even care about Saturday if TCU had won the Big 12. Probably, I'd still be really excited, but I'd feel like we finished the job that we started for, right? But now the job feels unfinished. And I think that little motivating factor is definitely something that is being carried by the players. I didn't want to lose that game, but if you're going to lose a game in order to remind you what it feels like to lose a game, that reminder is deeply ingrained. I don't know if you guys saw the press conference after the Big 12 championship and Max Duggan's emotional state. The second hardest press conference I've ever been in my, maybe it's top 3 for sure. There's some awkward ones in the Gary Patterson years, but I know that wasn't fake. That hurt was very, very real. And I can guarantee you that feeling has carried Max and his teammates. It has sat in them every single minute of every single day for the last 3 weeks. And so if that extra juice can carry them to pull off this improbable upset, I'm good. I'm done. I'm happy. I will feel fully satisfied in anything that happens after that. I wouldn't care if TCU wins Saturday and then goes out and loses 50-3 to Georgia or Ohio State. Not Ohio State. We can't lose. We can lose 50-3 to Georgia. Ohio State, it's got to be 41-27 to be okay, I think. But yeah,
Okay.
At that point, I'm good. I'm happy. I'm good. We've shut up the haters. We've proven that TCU can win against the Big Ten. All those freaking obnoxious Michigan fans in my mentions will have to eat crow, and I will be utterly obnoxious online on Sunday. The things that I will say that I should not say. I'm an educator and I should be a positive example for my students. Nope. It's the wheels are coming off on Sunday, and I will just be trash talking Michigan for a solid 12 hours.
So do you think that my final individual question, I'm going to leave it with this. Do you think that this 2022 team is, with the loss of Max Duggan, is still built for a repeat run in the final 4-team edition of the CFP next year?
I think that's going to be tough. You're going to lose Max Duggan. I think Chandler Morris will probably be the starting quarterback next year, and he's obviously super talented. He's got to stay healthy. I do also think TCU will go after a quarterback in the transfer portal for sure, for some competition between him and Sam Jackson. But you're probably going to lose Kendre Miller, because if I'm Kendre Miller, I'm going to the NFL draft. You're losing Quentin Johnston because he hasn't announced it yet, but he's going to the NFL draft. He's going to be a top 15 pick. You're losing 3 out of your 5 starting. Yeah, you're losing 3 out of your 5 starting offensive linemen. You're losing at least one of your starting linebackers. You're losing at least one of your top 2 corners, possibly both of them, because Josh Newton could also theoretically declare for the draft. I think next year is the beginning of Sonny Dykes starting to put the team together the way that he wants it to look. This 82% returning production on both sides of the ball this year. This was Gary Patterson's team. Sonny found a way to put square pegs in square holes somehow and made it work. But no, I think he'll take a step back next year, and I think the Big 12 is going to be really good. I think Texas Tech is good. I think Baylor, their quarterback situation notwithstanding, is going to be better next year than they were. Kansas, obviously, Jalen Daniels is coming back. That team is going to be really good. You still have to deal with Texas. It's going to have Quinn Ewers in his second year starting and Archie Manning backing him up, but they still bring back a ton of talent. Oklahoma won't be as bad as they were this year. Oklahoma State might be worse than they were this year. Oklahoma State's the other team. I was like, oh, you've got a long road ahead of you guys. But I think, and then you're also bringing in, BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, UCF, all of which are quality programs coming off of decent to good years. So I don't think that TC is going to start off 12-0 again. I think that it's going to be a tiny step back. What we want to see now is what the next 4 or 5 years are going to look like out of that team next year. So you inherited a bunch of players, you inherited a bunch of production, and you made lemons out of lemonade, or lemonade out of lemons for sure. Now, Sonny, you're going to start putting in your guys the way that you want this thing built. What's that going to look like? And so if TCU is, say 8-4 next year and wins a bowl game, I think fans are going to be really understanding of that. What you can't do is fall back to 5-7 or 6-6 and have people immediately go, so you are a one-hit wonder. Like that's got to be the thing. So I think they'll be competing late into November for a chance to play in the Big 12 championship. I don't know if they're going to have this kind of magical run in them for a second straight year.
Well, we don't know what the 2023 Big 12 schedule is going to look like. But with all the transfers coming into Colorado and the top recruiting by Coach Primetime, yes, TCU starting at home against Colorado, but you got a rough road ahead of you.
That'll be fun. That'll be a fun game. Oh,
it's going to be the entertainment. Look, I will say this much. I am very glad TCU is playing Colorado in week 1 and not like week 4. Yeah. Right, because I think Deion's it's gonna take some time for him to get that thing rolling and get all those transfers on the same page. I think TCU will be just fine against them in week 1. It'll be entertaining, and I will tell you, that'll probably be the first time I ever skip a TCU head coach press conference to go listen to the visiting press conference, because I'm gonna want to hear what Coach Prime has to say for sure. But yeah, it's and I'm fully anticipating that the Big 12 is going to stick it to Oklahoma and Texas and send both of those guys to Provo. So maybe we get BYU at home, but if I'm the Big 12 commissioner, that's what I'm doing at least. So yeah, it's going to be the Big 12. Everybody wants to crap on the Big 12, but I'm telling you, from top to bottom, there's not a better league in the country. All 10 of those teams at one point were a game away, or had a win to get bowl eligible situation. Right. And so, I think that, Texas Tech was a lot better than Ole Miss, and Kansas was almost better than Arkansas. And so I think that you're looking at really good teams top to bottom. There's not a poorly coached team in that conference. All of those are really, really well coached programs, and they all recruit decently, in regards to who they are as a school. And so, it's gonna be tough. My biggest hope is that TCU gets a bye week in the middle of the season and that they don't have to play 9 straight conference games again, because I think this is our 3rd straight year of doing that, and it's awful.
Yeah, that Colorado game, that's gonna be wow, and
it'll be fun.
I'm looking forward to that schedule announcement pretty soon, which I don't know when. Soon.
Usually February. Yeah, I think the first week of February is when we're kind of anticipating that to drop, hopefully.
But yeah, it's going to be really fun, and there's going to be a lot of coaches for sure getting looks from the NFL,
For sure.
I'm waiting to see when Coach Lee Leipold is
Yeah.
phone calls. I mean that.
Yeah.
And my God, college game day. Instead of going to the Red River rivalry, they go to the TCU Kansas game at Lawrence,
Yeah.
Kansas. That was
Awesome.
wow.
So happy for Kansas. Super, super happy.
And
They deserved it. I'm glad we beat them, but that's a huge moment for them.
I wasn't at
sure.
the time because I was picking Kansas.
Yeah. Everybody was. Everybody. I picked Kansas. So it's fine. Don't worry. Don't worry. I picked against us. I
hope I
TCU
didn't
on Saturday.
I hope I didn't hurt TCU's feelings on that one.
No.
But
No, we won. So it's all good in hindsight.
Yeah, this is just business. Please.
So when you cover a team, isn't it like bad for a team reporter to pick against the team they cover?
Look, I went to TCU. I love TCU. My heart is with the Horned Frogs. The best compliment I've ever received from a student was when she told me that she's like, I hope I go to a college that I still love 20 years later as much as you still love TCU. So like, obviously bleed purple for sure. But when I'm trying to do my job, I try to do my job. I try to be objective. If I think TCU is going to win, then I pick TCU. If I think that there are certain situations where TCU it's not a good matchup for them, I'm not afraid to pick against the Horned Frogs. I already get a ton of crap online just for being a woman covering football anyway. So like, what's a few more people throwing hate my way? It doesn't really bother me. No, it totally bothers me, of course, but I am human. But yeah, so I think, I'm not a full-time journalist. I'm not a beat reporter. I'm somebody that's a TCU fan that writes about TCU. But at the end of the day, I still want to have integrity in my job. And so I try to be as honest and as even keeled as possible. Like, yeah, do I want to go out here and say Michigan sucks and TCU's going to roll them by 40? Yeah, I do. Of course I want to say that. Do I believe that? No, because I watch games. Like I watch football. I understand it. And I know what TCU's up against. So I try to be objective and fair, but if you catch me in the right moment, then you'll just hear me. The TCU admissions director was laughing when he came to visit my school because he said that I'd done a good job of making kids drink the purple Kool-Aid all across the country for him, and I should get a finder's fee for all these applicants they get the way I talk about TCU. So I obviously love my school and had a great experience there and love still being connected to the program. But at the end of the day, I try to be fair.
How funny was it to see Baylor having to go back to Amon G. Carter Stadium for their bowl?
Oh my God. I can't tell you the group text that I'm in with a couple of guys that cover TCU. The irony and the schadenfreude that we had over that, watching them have to go to Amon G. Carter Stadium to lose in TCU Stadium in like a 9-degree day and get rolled by a Service Academy running the triple option. Like, what more could I possibly, and I will say, like, since, Art Briles left, I don't hate Baylor with the fervor that I used to because
I love
Matt
Dave
Rule is a
Aranda.
really good guy. Yeah, Dave Aranda is a great guy. Matt Rule's a great guy. I think Blake Shapen is kind of a douche, if I can say that on your podcast. But I don't harbor the ill will, but it was funny. I laughed. Like, I watched that game, but I really did enjoy it. I generally, like I said, I have a lot of former students that go to Baylor because I guess I don't always do my job well, and some of them I can't quite convert over. But it's a really good school, and Dave Rand is a really good guy. He runs a great football program. But yeah, no, that was absolutely delicious, and I loved every second of it.
He's a pretty good coach, I tell you what.
He's a hell of a coach.
Yeah, they're both. Yeah, that's gonna be a fun rivalry going forward with Sonny and Dave just going getting their programs up.
Yeah, and a lot of mutual respect, I think, between them. But when you beat a team, because back in 2014, Baylor beat us very similarly to the way that TCU beat Baylor this year. And so when you have those kind of heartbreaking losses stacked up against you, that rivalry only deepens. And so like I have a lot of Baylor friends. I have a lot of folks I interact with on Twitter that I genuinely love that went to Baylor. But the game week, it's radio silence. Like we don't talk to each other with anything nice to say. And then afterwards, we decide how much we're hurt, but for how long we can talk to each other again.
Well, can you go shout out your socials?
Yeah, give me a follow on the Coach Melissa on Twitter and Frogs Today. We've got a whole crew here. We're doing awesome stuff at Frogs Today on Twitter, www.frogstoday.com, and then our socials, Frogs Today on Instagram and Facebook. Really cool behind the scenes stuff. We've got video reporters, writers. We'll be covering the game. I'll be down on the field taking photos. So there'll be a lot of cool stuff to share over the coming days.
So before you get out of here, can you give us in the audience a final score prediction?
Yeah. See, you're gonna make me pick. I picked against them earlier on Twitter, and one of my friends gave me crap for it. But like I told him, like every time I've picked against TCU, TCU has won. So I'm playing chess, not checkers here. I think it's going to be a really good game. I think the Frogs are going to have a chance to be in it into the fourth quarter. Ultimately, I think that Michigan's going to be able to put together a long drive to kind of to drive it home for a game-winning touchdown or a field goal. I'm going to go 33-31 Wolverines, and I hope to goodness that I'm wrong. I would much rather look stupid than be right, you know?
I hope so too.
Well,
All
check
right,
out the interview and check out this channel, The Young Guns, and on YouTube, like, comment, subscribe, and you're going to be getting one of the best interviews ever. And check out Melissa and check out the Frogs War.
Frogs Today. Frogs War was the
Today, I'm so sorry. Thank you.
They do great work too. I love my friends.
Check out Melissa, because she does an awesome job covering TCU, and it's gonna be fun. You want to talk to her about TCU? These are the links.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'll